Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is slightly different because I haven't actually tested this project, so I'm gonna do it right now. Normally what I do is I'll make the cardigans, see what's working, and then I'll do another one for the video. This time I'm just gonna do it and see. The fact that you're watching the video, it means that it worked. So yay me. Okay, so what my vision is for this cardigan is to do a very simple bodice of the cardigan like so. It's gonna have a little pocket to the side and it will have a hood as well, and then I want to have like little bubble sleeves. So it's very much 1960s inspired cardigan, and I'm going to be making it for child 9 to 12 months. These are the dimensions that I'm going to need for my project. If you would like to make a cardigan for an older child possibly, then you have to follow these dimensions here. Go ahead and you can pause the video if you like and just keep this for maybe even future projects that you might have. Okay, I've been thinking about different patterns and they're all very similar, but I've opted out for this one, which is going to be like little clustery things of double crochet. It's a combination of double crochet, little chains, and possibly single crochet, but I'm going to see how I'll get on with that. And then we still need to figure out the yoke, but I'm going to tell you how we're going to do that. And I've got already my dimensions for what I'm looking for. What else we're going to need for this project, apart from the yarn, is very important, measuring tape. That's what we're going to use pretty much from the get-go. We're going to need stitch markers. You're going to need about possibly 4 stitch markers as we go through. So grab yourself one of those. You don't actually need to have this. You can use leftover yarn to mark your ends and so. You're going to need a label. Very important. If you're going to be doing your project, please put your name on it because you've done it. We're going to need yarning needle to tie in any loose ends we might have. We're gonna need a 4mm hook. Obviously, if you're using a different size yarn, you might actually need a bigger hook, or if you want your project to be a little bit bigger, again, you might opt in for a bigger hook or maybe even a smaller one. We're going to need a pair of scissors to cut our yarn as we go through, and very important, grab yourself a brew, and yeah, let's get started. Okay guys, so I'm going to take you through my thought processes when I'm making a cardigan. So first of all, we know that the head circumference is 45.5 and the neck is 24 centimeters. So our starting chain needs to be about 40 to 42 centimeters, and that's really going to be a starting point before we even work out how big our yoke is going to be. So go ahead and make your first loop like so and start chaining. So if you're making the same size cardigan as me, keep on chaining until you have about 40 to 42 centimeter chain. If you're making a cardigan for an older child, please follow these dimensions, but please make sure that it's a little bit smaller. So maybe about 3-4 centimeters smaller. So for example, 12 to 8 months, it's going to be around 44, maybe even 43 centimeters. This one is going to be about 44, 45, and so on. So start your chain and keep chaining until you have the desired length for the edge that you are making. Keep on doing this, and I'm going to meet you once I have the desired length of my chain. While you're doing it, please make sure that you count how many stitches you have done for your chain, and this is going to be very important. So I've done my chain now, as you can see, and it is approximately, I need more space. It's about 40, sort of just over 42 centimeters, which is absolutely fine. When you are actually measuring your chain, please don't just pull it like this, because that's not going to give you an accurate reading. So just do straighten it, but just don't pull it too tight. Okay, so mine has 76 chains, which is just as many as I need for my yoke. As you can see, I've got a yoke with 76 chains, which is absolutely fine. Now you might have done bigger or smaller. By all means, have a look at the corresponding yokes, and that's the one that you're going to be doing for your cardigan. So for me, it's going to be this one. If you're doing, you know, different sizes, you might actually need a bigger one, and so on. So this is the one I'm going to be making. Okay, so I've got my yoke there. Please remember, when you're doing the yoke and when you're doing the corners of the yoke, you will be adding stitches with each row you do. So for the first row, what I like to do, or for any row really, is to write the rows down, how many I'm anticipating on having. And then on row number 1, so I'm going to start with 11 stitches, then I'm going to have a V-stitch, then 14 and 22, because the other ones are just a repeat. So the section with 11, on the first row we're going to add 1. So in the first row we're going to add 1, so that's going to make it 12, then 13, 14, and so on. The section that has 14 stitches, we are adding 2, because it's got 2 V-stitches. So that's going to make it 16, 18, 20, and so on. And then for this section, which has got 22, again, there's 2 on each corner. So we're going to be adding 2 with each row. It's very handy to have these written down, especially because we're going to be making this pattern. This is very irregular pattern, especially when it comes to the V-stitches. It's very much going to depend on how you land just before the V-stitch. So knowing your stitch count is going to be very important in here, because I try to figure out how to do it so I don't have to count the stitches so much, but I couldn't come up with anything, and I really like this pattern, so yeah, I'm doing it. Let's get started and it will all come clear after. Okay, so our next row is going to be a row of single crochet, and then we're going to make the V-stitches. Let's do this. To start our work, we're going to chain 1 just so we can lift our work. And in this second chain from the hook, we're gonna do a single crochet, like so. And then in there, we're gonna pop in a stitch marker. As I said to you guys before, if you don't have these, you can always use a leftover yarn and just basically weave it in here. For my cardigan, I need to do 11 single crochet before I do the V-stitch. Again, if you're making a bigger, if your yoke is bigger and you're making cardigan for an older child, you might want to do more, but for mine, and this is for 9 to 12 months, I'm gonna need 11. So I've done one already, and I'm gonna go ahead and chain 10 more. You chain however many you need for your yoke, and then I'm gonna meet you just before we come to the V-stitch, so then we can do the V-stitch together. I have done 10 single crochets. I'm just gonna do the 11th one now, and after this I'm gonna have to do a V-stitch. So the V-stitch is gonna be in this stitch just coming, so it's that one there. How we're gonna do the V-stitch, we're gonna do a single crochet into that stitch like so. We're gonna chain 2. Now you can actually chain 1 if you want. It's not gonna ruin your stitch count or anything like that. Basically we are just creating a space for the corner. I like to chain 2 when I'm doing single crochets, purely because it just makes it a little bit bigger and I can see it easily, but this is totally up to you. And then in that same stitch you're gonna do another single crochet. I'm gonna do a couple more single crochets for the next section now, because I just want to show you what our work looks like after the V-stitch. So after the V-stitch, you would have noticed that our work is starting to turn, and this is what we want, because we want to create that rectangle yoke. Now if you want, you can go ahead and put another stitch marker in the chain space that we've created of the V-stitch. I like to do that when I'm doing single crochets, because as I said, it can be very hard to see where it is because of the size of the single crochet. So go ahead and finish this first row. Please remember to put V-stitches after each section. So for me, the next section's got 14 single crochet, then a V-stitch, then 22 V-stitch, 14 single crochets, V-stitch, and I'm gonna finish with 11. You do the yoke that you're doing, and I'm gonna meet you at the end of this row. We're gonna finish this row 1 together, and we're gonna start on row 2, which is our pattern row. Here I am coming to the end of row 1. I've just got 1 stitch left there, and I'm gonna go ahead and put a single crochet. That's a row 1 completed. Let's chain 2 and turn our work. So row number 2 is gonna be our pattern row, and I did show you the pattern, guys. If you're not sure about it, I'm gonna talk you through, but basically it's gonna consist of double crochets and chain 1s. So this is our pattern row. We're gonna, each time that we chain 2 on our pattern row, we're gonna count it as a double crochet. So please remember that. I will actually put a stitch marker there, because sometimes I tend to miss the chain 2s and then my work gets all wonky, and I don't want that, because you want the edges for this to be as straight as possible. How we're going to start our pattern row? After we've chained 2, we're going to yarn over and insert a hook into that first chain there. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Rather than finishing this double crochet, what we'll do is we're going to skip a chain, and in that next chain there we're going to start another double crochet. So yarn over, skip 1, and in the next one yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then we're going to finish this double crochet, yarn over, pull through all 3 and chain 1. Next, we're just going to repeat what we've done. So yarn over, insert your hook into that chain there that we've just used. So we're always going to go back to the chain when we are doing this row. Insert a hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, don't finish it, skip 1, and then in the next one we're going to start another double crochet, and this time we're going to finish this. So we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 and then chain 1. It's very important that you don't miss that chain 1, because if you do, you're going to get less stitches and your work is not going to come out right. So keep on going with this pattern for this first section. Please remember that on this section in the previous row we added a stitch. So before there was 11, so now you should have 12 by the time you come to the V-stitch. Very important, so keep track of your stitches, otherwise your work is not going to come out correctly. So keep on going with this pattern, and I'm going to meet you just before you come to the V-stitch. I'm coming to the end of that section. I have done 10 stitches, which means I will need to do 2 more before the V-stitch. So I'm going to chain 1, and then as you can see here, I've got the stitch that I've used, then I've got another one here, this is from the V-stitch of the previous row, and then I've got the V-stitch. So there's a couple of different V-stitches that we're going to do for this work. It just depends on how you land before the V-stitch. So for this, I'm going to start my double crochet. So I'm going to continue with this pattern. I'm going to skip 1 and I'm going to land in the middle of the V-stitch, and that is fine. So go ahead and finish that mini cluster there. Okay, and I've got 12 stitches now, which means that I'm ready for my V-stitch. So the V-stitch is going to be just in that chain space there that we created from the previous row. How we're going to do our V-stitch is we're going to do a double crochet, chain 1, and we're going to make another double crochet into that same stitch, and that's our V-stitch. The next section we're going to start the same way that we've ended on the previous section, so it's very much going to be mirror. So remember, we finished it with a mini cluster in the V-stitch. So that's how we're gonna start the next one. So we're gonna start that mini cluster in the V-stitch. We're gonna skip 1, and in the next one we're gonna finish that mini cluster like so, and then we're gonna chain 1. So we've done 2. Remember, on the next section we would have added 2 stitches from the previous row, which means that I had 14 to begin with. Added 2 more, I need to have 16 now. So I've done 2, and I'm just going to continue with that pattern all along this section. You do the same, and I'm going to meet you when you're close to the V-stitch, and then we're going to do that V-stitch together. I'm coming towards the end of the next section. So this is the one that had 14 stitches at the beginning. Remember, with a row 1 we've added 2, which means that now we've got 16. So if you actually count them from the V-stitch, so we are not going to count this one because this is the V-stitch, we're going to count from after. 13, so I've got 13 there. 13, yeah, so that's 13. We're gonna make 14, the little cluster will make 15, and then chain 1, that's 16, and I'm up to the V-stitch there now. So we finished just before the V-stitch. So this is a very easy one because this V-stitch is going to be very easy. It's just going to be double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet into that chain space. And again, on the next section, what we'll do is we're going to start the next section the same way that we finished the previous. So what we'll need to do is chain 1, because that's how we finished it. So this is a mirror image, and then start it from the next stitch there. Don't finish that double crochet, skip 1 and finish that little cluster into that next stitch and chain 1. So we've done 3 so far, and yeah, keep on going with section 3. So this is the back section, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna meet you once you're close to the next V-stitch, and we can do that one together as well, just so you can get the hang of the V-stitches really, because it can be a little bit confusing since they're all going to be slightly different depending on where you land and how big your yoke is, etc. So keep crocheting and let's meet up at the next V-stitch. I'm coming towards the end of that back section. I've got 22 stitches that I've done, and I need 2 more for this row, and that's why it's very important for you guys to actually write down how many stitches you're going to be adding on each row. So I know on row 1 I've added 2 more, so for this row I do need 16, and I'm going to add 2 more, which is going to make 18 for each side of the V-stitch. So I need 2 more. I'm going to chain 1, so that's 23, and again, like we did previously, I'm going to start the cluster into that same stitch, skip 1, and this is going to take me to the V-stitch there, which means that I'm going to need to finish that cluster in the V-stitch like so. Now I'm not going to chain 1 here because I've got enough stitches here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the V-stitch with a double crochet, chain 1 and another double crochet, and we've come to the next section. And again, the next section is going to start the same way that the previous section end, which means we're going to start with a cluster in the V-stitch, skip 1, and in the next one we're going to just finish that cluster like so. We're going to chain 1 and continue with our pattern that we've been making. So go ahead and do this next section, and I'm going to meet you just before the last V-stitch. We're going to do that last V-stitch together, and we're going to finish this row. Again, I'm coming towards the end of that section, so I've got 14 stitches, which means that I need to add 2 more, and I've got 2 stitches left before my V-stitch, which means that I need to do my cluster. So this is number 15, skip 1, and in this next one I'm just going to finish my cluster there. So that's 15, 16, and I'm ready for my V-stitch. So this is just going to be your normal V-stitch in there, which is double crochet, chain 1 and another double crochet into that chain space there. And again, we are coming to the last section. We're gonna start this last section the same way that we ended the previous one, which is chain 1. We're gonna start that cluster into that first stitch just to mirror what we've done and continue with our pattern. So go ahead and do the pattern for this last section, and I'm gonna meet you at the end of this section. We're gonna finish a row 2 together, and we're gonna start on a row number 3, which is gonna form your pattern repeat. I've come to the end of that last section. I've just got one stitch left where my stitch marker is, and I have done 10 single crochet. So we are not counting the V-stitch, but we are counting the ones that we've done after the V-stitch. So I've done 10, which means that I need to add 2 more. I need to chain 1, and I'm gonna do just a normal double crochet into that last stitch there. And that's pretty much it, guys, and chain 1. I would just like to say that if you have finished, so if your cluster has come on your last stitch, so let's just say I didn't have this stitch, but my cluster has come on my last stitch here, you're not going to chain 1, you're just going to do a normal double crochet instead of that chain 1, because if you chain 1, what's going to happen after? You're not really having anywhere to go with that. So don't chain 1, just put another double crochet into that last stitch. Okay, so let me just complete this. I'm just going to do a double crochet there and chain 1 and turn your work. Now these spaces here, you will have these I think on every row if you're doing the same as me. So if you started with a odd number of stitches for that first and last section, you will have like these little gaps, and that's quite nice because that's going to give you a button opening, I'm thinking. We'll see. Okay, the row number 3 is easy peasy. It's just single crochets. So do a single crochet into that first stitch there, pop in your stitch marker, and basically do single crochets all along your work. Please remember that in the V-stitches you will do another V-stitch, but this time with single crochet, the same as we did for row number 1, and yeah, continue with your work. And that is very much it for the pattern repeat. Really, you're going to be repeating a row number 2 and row number 3 for your yoke until you have the desired yoke size. So for me, the desired yoke size will be 12 centimeters. If you're making for an older child and a bigger cardigan, you're going to follow these dimensions. Please remember, these are in centimeters. So go ahead, keep crocheting, and I'm going to meet you once my yoke is 12 centimeters. We do measure the yoke from the corners, so from one end of the corner to the other needs to be 12 centimeters. Please remember to count your stitches when you're doing the pattern row and to follow the V stitches that we've just done. So there's going to be like 2 different ones depending where you land. Please bear that in mind, and if you're counting your stitches, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Keep crocheting, and I'm gonna see you once my yoke is bigger and yours too, and we're gonna start the next part of our project, which is going to be the body of our cardigan. I would actually recommend you to end on a single crochet row, because that's going to be easier for us to connect our work like so and make the arm openings. It's going to be a little bit harder on the pattern row. I don't even want to attempt that, to be honest. So finish on the pattern row, get ready for the single row where we're gonna actually make the armholes. Keep crocheting. I'm gonna see you when my project is bigger and I'm gonna explain it all to you. It's gonna be fun and I'm hoping easy. So let's do it, guys. We can do this. We can do this. Come on. Here's my yoke, and I've got the size that I need, which is the 12 centimeters. I'm quickly gonna just show you. So we're gonna measure it in the corner like that. So, well, it's about 12.5, but that is okay. That is absolutely fine, because now I'm up to the single crochet stitch, and I'm hoping you as well. And we are ready for the second part of our project, which is the body of our cardigan. What that means is that we have to connect the corners like so in order for us to form the arm openings there. I think our cardigan is actually looking very pretty. I absolutely love this, and the corners there for the V-stitches, to be honest, you can't really tell, I don't think. Wow, okay, check me out. Don't be fooled, guys, this is not the original brew. I did have a couple actually. So let's get started on the next section. Oh, I haven't actually finished this. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna just take that out. Gonna chain one and finish it with a double crochet. Chain one, and I'm gonna turn my work. Now we're gonna start on this next row as we would normally do, which is with single crochet into that first stitch like so. Go ahead and pop in a stitch marker in there like so, and keep on doing your single crochets. What I'm going to do is I'm going to meet you once we are all near this V-stitch, and we're going to connect our work together. So keep on doing your single crochets. Please make sure that you have the right count for these, and I'm going to meet you at the V-stitch. We're going to connect our work together and keep crocheting. I have done my single crochets all across that section there, and I've come to the V-stitch. So what we'll need to do is we're going to connect this V-stitch to the next V-stitch. So this is the V-stitch on the other side there. How we're going to do it, please make sure that you're following the line of crocheting. So we are crocheting this way. Theoretically, we should be going this way as well, and then continue there, which means that we're gonna fold it like so, and the way we're gonna connect those V-stitches is we're gonna basically do another V-stitch but on both sides. So how are we gonna do it? Insert your hook into that V-stitch, pull up a loop and create your single crochet like so. Don't chain one, but instead you're going to do another single crochet into that V-stitch on the other side. So this one here it's, so insert your hook there and create another single crochet, and that's pretty much it. Let me do a few more along this line. Please make sure that you're following the line of crocheting. Make sure you're not on the wrong side, because, well, it's going to be a bit pantsy because you have to take it all down after. So let me pull that and just show you. Okay, so we've done the single crochets there, we've connected it, we've done the single crochet in that V-stitch, we've done a single crochet into that next V-stitch, which is just there, and just continue with the V-stitches, and that's your arm opening there. Hope that makes sense, but keep crocheting and making your single crochets. I'm going to do the same, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to meet you at the next V-stitch, and then we're going to continue, well, we're going to join those two together and finish with that row. I've come to that next V-stitch, so what I need to do is just connect this V-stitch to the last one and create the second arm opening for our cardigan. So that's this one here, and again we're going to create a single crochet just there, and then turn our work like so, well, connect them two together and do a single crochet into that next V-stitch, and that's it. Continue with your single crochets until you reach the end of your work. Please make sure that you're on the right side, so just have a look. I've been crocheting this way, so my work continues on the right side. So if you've done it like this, it's just going to look, well, it's going to be on the wrong side, and you don't want that. So keep on making your single crochets, and I'm going to meet you at the end of this row. I've got the last stitch there where my stitch marker is, so this is your chain 2. Please don't forget about that. I'm going to do my last stitch there, and I'm going to chain 2 and turn our work. Basically, for this next row we're going to be doing the pattern row, but this time we are not going to be making any V-stitches because there's no need anymore. We've done our arm openings, so it's just going to be a continuous row of our pattern. Same as before, please make sure you put a stitch marker in there, into that chain 2 space. Well, it's not space, it's a chain 2, because that's going to count as a double crochet. And let's start on the pattern row. So we're going to start in that first chain there, like so. Okay, we are not going to finish that, we're going to skip one, and in the next one, this is where we're going to finish our little cluster, like so. Chain 1 and continue with that pattern all until the, well, all along this row until you reach the end. So finish that and then chain 1. The next cluster is actually starting in that last chain that we've used right there. Don't finish it, skip one, and in the next one, this is where we're going to finish our double crochet and chain 1. So keep on doing this, and I'm going to meet you at the end of that row and explain to you what's going to happen after. So I'll see you in a jiffy. I'm coming to the end of that row, so I've got the last stitch there. All I have to do is to chain 1 and then do a double crochet into that last chain. Okay, and chain 1. Turn our work. The next row is the single crochet row, so keep on doing that. So you're going to do a single crochet row, then another row of pattern before we start making a couple of increases. So this is what our work should look like now. So you should have a little bit there and it should start taking shape. You should have these fairly straight. Don't be too hard on yourself. For example, if this is not straight, maybe you've accidentally sort of added another stitch somehow, because we're going to make a border anyway, and that's going to hide it. So you know, don't worry too much about it, as long as it's not like a couple of stitches more. One, we can live with that. Okay, so keep on crocheting. The next row is just a single crochet row, and then after that you're gonna do the pattern row, and I'm gonna meet you once you are at the single crochet row afterwards, and I'm gonna show you how we're gonna do the increases. I'm coming to the end of this pattern row. So I've done my single crochet row and the pattern row. I've got 2 stitches left. I've chained 1, so I'm just going to do the last cluster, and the last cluster, as you can see, takes me to the stitch marker, which is absolutely fine. So I'm gonna do it there, finish this cluster, and I'm not going to chain 1, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a double crochet there, and that's all right. Chain 1 and turn your work. So this is the single crochet row that we're gonna do. However, on this row we're gonna do a couple of increases. We're gonna do the increases just under the armhole. So if you follow this sort of like line from where our armholes are, so it's gonna be roughly around here, and this is you're going to need your stitch markers for this. So let's just say a first row of increase is going to be possibly like the chain space here. I'm going to pop in the stitch marker there. Actually, I'm going to do it in the one before because it's easier to count it. And then what you need to do is to count how many stitches you've got until the beginning. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 18, 21. So I've got 26, and this is where I'm going to do my increase. Please make sure that you do the same on the other side. So go ahead and count the same amount of stitches, because you want your increase to be on the same the same distance from the end. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to pop in a stitch marker once I've counted it, and then what we'll do is we're going to start that row, and I'm going to meet you when we come to the stitch marker, and then we're going to do the increases together. So go ahead, mark the stitches where you're going to have the increase, start that row, and I'm going to meet you just before you come to the first stitch marker. I have come to the stitch marker now, and this is where I'm going to do my increase. So I'm going to take the stitch marker out, and the way we're going to do the increase is basically we're going to do 2 single crochets into that same stitch. So I've done 1, and I'm just going to place another one into that same stitch, and keep on doing your single crochets as normal until you get to the next stitch marker on the other side, and you're going to do increases there as well. Now for my work, I'm only going to do 1 lot of increases because I think my cardigan is fairly sort of loose, if you like, because I'm just gonna pop it in so you can look. so you can see. So yes, I'm gonna do just one set of increase. You can already see it there. It's increased a little bit, so I'm gonna do it like that, and it's gonna go down. If you feel you need to do more increases, because young children do wear nappies, so they might be a little bit bigger in that area, you might want to do further increases. By all means you can. So you're going to do increase on this row, you're going to do the pattern row, and then on the next single crochet row you're going to do another set of increase. So you're increasing it gradually. Don't just add lots of stitches on this row, because you're not going to get a good look. And that's pretty much it. You're going to follow that pattern now. So you're going to have a pattern row, single crochet row, and so on, until you get the desired length of your work. I'm gonna do mine. So if you have a look at the measurements, my sleeve will need to be around 18.5 or 19 centimeters. So my length is going to be a couple of centimeters longer than that. So I'm looking really for about 21 to 22 length of cardigan. You might want to do it shorter, you might want to do it longer. So just do what is good for you. Please make sure that when you are measuring the length of your cardigan, you actually measure it from here, from the bottom of your armhole and then down. So keep on crocheting and do the body of your cardigan, and I'm gonna meet you once we've got that already. And what we'll do is we're gonna start on the sleeves. I need to have a little think about how we're gonna do them, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna come to me as we are crocheting this. So do that, and I'm gonna see you shortly. This is the completed body of our cardigan. So I have done the length of mine, and I've just placed it like this because I want to show you the dimension of it. So we're going to measure it from the bottom of the arm opening there, and as you can see I've got about 21.5, which is fine because I finished it with a single row there, because that looks neater than if you actually finish it on the pattern row. Next we're going to do the sleeves, and as you can see I have done one of them, and it looks like a little bit like this. So they're a bit puffed up there, and then we've got the ends like that. So I've used this white glittery yarn forward, and we're gonna do the next sleeve together. So I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. We are not going to do the edging yet, we're going to leave that for the end. So what I like to do when I do the sleeves is actually I'm going to tie this in together and the bottom as well, because I don't want it to move. And then we'll start this sleeve together. We're going to finish that. That's going to be the end of part 1, and in part 2 we're going to build on the hood, and we're going to do the edging, and we're going to put a little pocket on the side as well, and obviously put the buttons in. So that's the plan. So let's get started on our sleeve. To start on the sleeve, we're going to connect our yarn at the bottom of our arm opening. As you can see, we would finish on the pattern row. You would have done the same, because if you remember, we would have connected the V-stitches with a single crochet row, which means that we are all on this pattern row when it comes to the sleeves. That means we're going to connect our yarn, and we're going to crochet single crochets all across on the wrong side of the sleeve. The way I like to connect my yarn is from the wrong side out and then turn it, purely because If you do it on the right side, you're going to have that little tail on it, which you have to hide after, and I don't want that. So do your starting chain like that. I'm just going to insert my hook from that right side inwards. I'm going to connect that little chain, pull out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just chain one. And we are not going to count this as a stitch at the moment. And go ahead, do single crochets all across this row. So that's my first. I'm going to pop in my stitch marker and crochet one single crochet in all the chains around. Please bear in mind that if you're doing your second sleeve like I'm doing now, you need to do exactly the same number of stitches all across. So for my first sleeve I had 43, which means that's how many I'm going to need to do across here. I should have 43 anyway, because you know, I don't think I've missed any stitches, but please bear that in mind for yours. Once you come near the end of this row, I'm gonna meet you, and then we're gonna finish this row together, and then we're gonna start on the next row. Keep crocheting and I'll see you shortly. So I've come to the end of that single crochet rows, and what I need to do is just to slip stitch it to that first chain that we've made, and we're gonna chain 2 and then turn our work. So we're going to be working on the right side now. This chain 2 that we've just made will count as a double crochet. So go ahead and put a stitch marker right there so you don't lose that. Sometimes it's very easy to forget that chain 1. What we'll do next is we're going to do the pattern row. The pattern row is going to be exactly the same like how we've been making so far. So we're going to do, well, we're going to start a double crochet into that same stitch there. We're going to skip one, and in the next one, this is where we're going to finish our double crochet like so, chain 1, and we're going to continue with this pattern. So this is exactly the same pattern that we've been doing while we were doing the body of our cardigan. So go ahead and complete this row 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to meet you once we finish, or we come to the end of this row 2. I'm going to show you how we're going to finish this, and then we're going to start on row 3 and 4, and we'll go from there. Don't worry too much when we finish, because sometimes you might finish right at the chain 2, sometimes you might finish like a couple of stitches beforehand. Don't worry about it. I'm going to show you how we're going to finish. So go ahead, keep crocheting, and I'll meet you right here. Okay, I'm coming to the end of that row. As you can see, I've got one chain left there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my little cluster in that chain there, and then we have to slip stitch this to this chain 2 that we've just made. So I'm going to take my stitch marker off, insert my hook there, pull up a loop, and then put it on those 2, and then chain 1. Now, if for example you feel that this cluster have finished on that last chain, don't worry too much about it. Just finish it on the last chain, and then slip stitch it to the chain 2 space or chain 1, and then slip stitch it. Just make sure that you've got the same amount of stitches like in the previous row. So you will need to have the same amount of stitches. Don't do any more or don't do any less at this moment. So just keep on counting your stitches. So we've chained 1, and we're going to turn our work. So this is going to be a single crochet row. this chain 1 is not going to count as a stitch when we are doing a single crochet row. So go ahead and make your single crochet into that first stitch and pop in your stitch marker there. So repeat the single crochet row and the pattern row. So this is going to be row 3 and 4 if you're doing the same cardigan as me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to meet you at row 5, because row 5 is the row that we're going to be doing the first set of increases for the sleeves to give them that puffiness look. So go ahead to row 3 and 4. So this is going to be the single crochet and the pattern row, and I'm going to meet you at row 5 when we're going to be doing our increases. I have now completed row 4. I've chained 1 and I'm going to turn my work, and this is the row of increase that we're going to be doing. So if you're doing a cardigan for an older child, you might want to do another set of single crochet and then a pattern row before you do the increase, or you might actually want to start your increase now. You're going to have a bigger puffed up sleeves. How are we going to do the increase? Let's just do a single crochet into that first chain, and I'm going to pop in my stitch marker. And then for this row of increases, we're going to chain 5 and then we're going to do the increase. So that's our first one, that's our second, 3, 4 and 5, and this sixth one we're going to do 2 single crochets into that chain space. So that's 1 and that's 2, and that's our increase. If, for example, you feel you're finishing, at this chain just before the chain space, go ahead and make the increase in the chain space, because it's going to look a little bit better. What we'll do is we're going to continue doing single crochets, and on the other side in that chain space there, so we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in this chain space we're going to do another set of increase. So this is going to be the first row of increase, so we're going to increase it by 2. Then what we'll do is we'll do the pattern row, and I'm going to meet you once we are back on the single crochet row, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do the other set of increase, and then how you're going to increase on every single crochet row going forward. So keep crocheting, don't forget to increase just as you're reaching the end in that chain space there. So it needs to be, you're on the 6th from the end, so that's going to be that. And then you're going to chain 2, you're going to do the pattern row, and I'm going to meet you once you are back at the single crochet row. I hope that makes sense. I have finished row 6, so this was the pattern row. So go ahead, chain 1 and turn our work. For chain 7, we're going to do another set of increase, but rather than increasing after the 5th chain, we're going to increase it after the 10th chain. So that's going to be 8, 10, so it's going to be in this 11th one here, and we're going to do 2 single crochets. From this row onwards, on every single crochet row you're going to do 2 increase. So you're going to do an increase as you start, and then you're going to do an increase as you're coming to the end of that single crochet row. The way you're going to increase it is on this row you're going to increase it after the 10th. On row 9 you're going to increase it after the 15th stitch. On row 11 you're going to increase it after the 20th stitch, and then row 13 you're going to go back after the 5th stitch, and then after the 10th stitch, and so on. This will give us a more of a even distribution of our chains. And I'm just going to show you this sleeve, the one that I've made before, and it's going to look a little bit more uniformed like this. So go ahead and do your sleeve. I'm gonna just measure this just to show you the size that I've got. So for this one I've got 18.5, which is how much I need for my size. Have a look at the size at the beginning of the video that I've shown you, and just do the length of the sleeve that you need for your ages. So you're going to do an increase on every single crochet row from now on. So if you need to do a longer sleeve, keep on increasing. What I'm going to do is, you're going to have about 5 centimeters for the end to do this edging. Please remember to finish on a pattern row there, and then come back to the video, and then we're gonna do the edging, because we're gonna have to do quite a lot of decreasing for this. So keep crocheting, and I'm gonna meet you once you're sort of like finished with your main color, and then we're gonna do the end of your sleeve together. 16 rows later, this is what my sleeve looks like. And as you can see, it's got this beautiful sort of widening there on the sleeve, and that's what's going to give us that sort of like a bubble look. If you're making a cardigan for an older child, or you know, for a child that is bigger, you will continue doing further rows until you get the size that you need. So I've finished on the pattern row. So for you, you would continue with a single crochet row, and you're going to increase by 2. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect the white yarn, or if you want to do a different color yarn, or you might want to actually leave go with the same color if you're doing one color cardigan. And we're gonna make all this, don't know if you can see it, but these indentations there at the end. So let's connect the white, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. I've come to the end of that row, so now is the time for me to connect with the other color and just do the finishing of the sleeve. So how I'm going to do that, I'm going to insert my hook into that first stitch, because I need to do a slip stitch. But rather than do the slip stitch with this blue yarn, I'm going to pick up my white one, do that beginning chain like so, and then I'm gonna slip stitch it with that white yarn like so, and that gives, let me just chain one so you can actually see it better, and that gives you a really nice smooth transitioning between them two. I'm just gonna cut my blue yarn there, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tie them in at the back so they don't come loose. And let's do the end of our sleeve. We're gonna do 2 single crochet together, and the way we're gonna do it, we're gonna insert our hook into that first chain, pull up a loop, and then you're not gonna finish this single crochet, you're gonna insert it into that next chain. You're gonna have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3, and go ahead, pop in your stitch marker there. And basically you're going to do this all along this row. So it's just going to consist of single crochet, 2 together. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, insert your hook, pull up another loop, yarn over, pull through. So go ahead and do this along this row. Please be mindful that you do need to count how many stitches you have, because at the end of this row you should have even number. If you don't have even number, at the end you can actually do 3 together, or you can just do 2 together and then just do like a normal single crochet. The important thing is to have even number of stitches, so your work should half by the end of this row. Coming towards the end of that last row, I'm gonna just pop out the stitch marker and I'm gonna slip stitch it to this first stitch that we've made. I'm gonna yarn over, pull up a loop and cut my yarn. I'm gonna rewind the ends at the end, but that is the second sleeve completed. If I put my hand in, actually you can see like how it bubbles, and then you've got this beautiful end there, which I think it just looks beautiful. So that's our sleeves. Next thing we need to do is to start on the hood.